Recording in progress. I expect that we're going to have a few more folks jumping on. I like to get started when possible. We are going to spend some time today covering a federal update because that's critical. We're going to meet everyone on the meeting briefly. We're going to talk about the new community and labor standards paper, maximizing community benefit and community value. We're going to just do a quick update on some of the resources and materials that the campaign is putting out, and then talk about action steps, and ask folks to take a couple of steps to help move the campaign along. And I'll say this, I hope to remember to say this at the end, but if any of you would like to meet with us or arrange for a conversation with your leadership or with your staff, we are happy to do that. We want to make sure that this campaign is something that belongs to all of us. So with that, I'm actually going to introduce our colleague, Jim Lyon, from the National Wildlife Federation, who's going to talk a little bit about what the heck is going on. And we're going to do intros first. I'm sorry, intros first. So everyone's going to, I'll call on someone, say your name, what organization you're with, and then pick another person. So I'm going to start by calling on Don Furco. Or Patricia DeMarco. Oh, there's John. Okay, John, it's back to you.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, this came up on my events calendar today as something I might be interested in, so I figured that I'd pop in and see what's going on with it. I'm the president of USW Local 1557 in Claremont.
Oh, great.
Pick another person.
I can't see. I'm actually driving, so somebody else do it.
Patricia DeMarco.
Yeah, Susan, you might want to unshare your screen so people can see each other while you go through this, unless that's a reason, unless that's a pain. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Patty DeMarco. I'm the Vice President of the Forest Hills Borough Council, and I'm on the Reimagine Appalachia team dealing with regenerative agriculture and the Civilian Conservation Corps. Glad to be here.
Ezra.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ezra Thrush. I'm the Senior Director of Government Affairs for PIN Future, based in Harrisburg. Next is Dan Taylor.
Thank you. I'm Dan Taylor. I'm the Appalachian Regional Field Organizer with Blue Green Alliance, and I'll go to Jim.
Jim Lyon, National Wildlife Federation, member of Reimagine Appalachia's team. And Don Furco.
The other one, Don Walker.
Oh, okay.
I'll go. I'm Steve Herzenberg with the Keystone Research Center in Pennsylvania. Not sure if I can see. Did we hear from Prem?
Hi, everyone. I'm Prem. I use he, him pronouns. I am in Pittsburgh, and I'm with the Democratic Socialists of America and a bunch of other things. But
did we hear from Don Walco?
Hello, this is Don Walco. Hello, this is Don Walco. I'm a volunteer working for Natalia Rudiak at this point. Good to see you.
And then what? Did we hear from Nasser Bay?
Hey, I'm Nasir Bey, he, him, his. I'm with the Urban Kind Institute. And as someone who grew up in Pittsburgh and now lives in the Appalachian Mountains, just thought it'd be kind of cool to pop in and see what's going on. And is anybody else not going?
Yeah, Renette, I'm sorry, and then Annie after that, and then we'll move into our agenda.
Okay. I guess I'll pass to Annie.
Hi, I am based in Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh. I'm with Penn Future, but I'm also the Reimagine Appalachia coordinator. Jeff Gary's just joined. Jeff, if you want to introduce yourself.
All right. We'll catch up with other introductions and Jeff will get a chance to introduce himself. I'm going to let him settled. We have this content here, which is you've seen this before, and it's available on the Reimagine Appalachia website, but it is about what our agenda is and about what the campaign is about. And so we're not going to start fresh every one of these meetings, but this is available, and I will publish these slides, so I included them. We are going to start with what are they doing in DC? And I'm going to ask my colleague Jim from the National Wildlife Federation to start, and then Jeff Garris, who another good colleague, will also pitch in, so we get these different perspectives on what's going on.
Hey folks, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
I'm going to have Jim go first, Jeff, and then I'll ask you to come in. So
Perfect.
Great. Jim, you want to start?
Thanks. I think I'm going to switch to.
Jim, we cannot hear you. You are on mute.
I wanted to give you the Washington experience of dysfunction here. So yes, what is going on in Washington right now? It is confusing. There is a lot of resources, but a lot of things are kind of coming together in terms of whatever the infrastructure and funding plan is and this type of thing. I'm going to break down a couple of key components that are definitely in play that interrelate with each other. But I apologize if it's confusing, but I've been trying to get this thing down because I think I begin to understand it. First off, as everybody's seen in the press, the White House is continuing to have bipartisan conversations with Republicans, and that's led by Senator Capito and others, about whether they can strike a deal. And they were supposed to strike a deal or not by Memorial Day. They've kicked the can a little further, but the reality is the offers are very far apart, and there's a general sense that they're not going to come together on this one. So it's a political issue at this point in terms of how do they disengage and who gets the blame and that sort of stuff. But that's going to continue on. Second, to keep an eye on, that's a little more confusing, is that Senator Manchin has set up his own bipartisan working group to see if he can strike a counter deal with Senator Romney and Portman and Collins. We don't really know what they're talking about. I mean, we watched Manchin very closely about kind of what he wants and what he's wanted. I don't know what they're going to come forward with. My sense is if this other process collapses that I just talked about, maybe they will try to fill the void. But my guess is that's going to have just as much of a problem out there. So just you've got these camps. The president put his budget out last Friday. I think the key to that is it reflects kind of what his America Jobs plan is and all the other good stuff that we're all pretty excited about out there. The numbers are confusing. It's the president's budget. It isn't going to become law, but it does kick off a budget process in Congress, where Congress will then have to pass a budget resolution. And then that'll be instructions to appropriation committees to do their stuff to fund the different branches of the government. So that's kind of the official thing that usually goes on. But it will also set up an opportunity for something that we've all been talking about, which is budget reconciliation afterward. And that's where you don't need a filibuster. You can play some fast and loose games to try to get some things through. And that, while it's not certain that we're going to have a budget reconciliation process, I think with the collapse of these other pieces, it's very likely. So that's the big games. Then there's the regular order stuff that's happening fast and furious right now, where there are bills, infrastructure bills that are moving forward. There's a surface transportation bill that has just been voted out of the Senate committee that is chaired by Senator Carper, Delaware, and Senator Capito. It passed 22-0, which is pretty amazing. It's got traditional roads and bridges, but it's also got $16 billion for climate programs, a lot on vehicles, since this is a transportation bill, and resiliency for communities and things like that. It's also got some stuff we wouldn't like either. some permitting issues and streamlining and stuff like that. But this is just out of committee. It hasn't gone to a Senate floor. There are other regular order infrastructure bills that may get wrapped into something like this over in the Senate that's going forward. Senate Finance Committee has its own thing going. There's a water bill, Water Resources Development Act that's moving. So that's regular order. The House hasn't done some of that yet. The House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee is expected to mark up its version of an infrastructure bill, roads, cars, whatever it is, next week when they come back. And how they kind of go forward on this with everything else is a little unclear as well. So the point of all that mess is it is possible that some of these regular order bills will get through the Congress because there's enough stuff in it for everybody and get to the president's desk. And if that's the case, there, depending on where you sit around the table here, trying to figure out kind of how's this all going to play out, it could be that that is the bipartisan deal that happens, that some of these bills go forward, but then the White House and the Democrats pivot to the budget reconciliation process to ram through their stuff that's not involved with that we also like even more so. So I'm gonna, there's one other thing I should say. The House Natural Resources Committee marked up 3 important bills that are relevant to Reimagine last week, and that was to reauthorize the Abandoned Mineland Fund, to pass the Reclaim Act, and to pass a orphan wells restoration program nationally. They came out of the committee. They will go forward just like the other stuff, and we'll see what happens. So I'm gonna stop there. I hope I haven't confused anybody any further, but this is all going to play out over the next couple of weeks and months, at least until August, and then we'll see where we stand. You're muted, Susan.
Yes, of course I am. So I'm going to ask Jeff to fill in and help flesh that out a little, or give more context. So Jeff, what do you have to add to that?
Sure. Yeah. No, I think Jim covered a lot of it really very thoroughly. You know, I would say kind of zooming back here, kind of at the big picture, you know, these attempts at bipartisan conversation to possibly do some kind of a limited, very traditional infrastructure bill with bipartisan support, enough votes to pass it. That's continuing. You know, originally the president had set a deadline of Memorial Day that they had to have some kind of a deal roughly worked out by then. He did extend it a little bit, but it's really sounding like probably by some point next week, they're going to have to make a decision one way or the other. Can they do this, you know, kind of limited small version of this infrastructure plan, or do they just have to scrap that and move on to what they probably would go on to anyway? You know, I think Jim sort of referenced this, that even if they do a limited bipartisan compromise traditional infrastructure package, they're probably still going to do the bulk of the American Jobs Plan and the American Families Plan rolled together into a big budget reconciliation bill that would most likely be on a timeline with the upcoming budget for the next fiscal year, which the president just unveiled, as Jim mentioned. We really think that the time is now for folks to be having conversations with members of Congress about specific things that you want to see included in a big budget reconciliation package. You know, we would love to see everything that President Biden proposed in the American Jobs Plan, Families Plan, and in his tax plan passed, plus even some things to strengthen that. But the reality is we're probably more likely to see a reconciliation package that pulls together what Democrats can find support for within their own caucus. And there's a big question mark about what that's going to be. what their own caucus will support, but all of this being pulled together, whatever they can get from everything the president's laid out into a big budget reconciliation bill. They keep saying they want to be having discussion and debate on that on the floor by the end of July. Everything that I'm hearing from folks in DC right now, this includes allies, it also includes pundits and news media outlets. The sense really is that they are probably not going to be able to pull together and pass a budget reconciliation package before the August recess. Maybe, but it's looking less and less likely. And the longer that they wait to try to work out this bipartisan limited package, that's time being taken away. So, we would say worst case scenario probably is that they end up getting to August, not having a package ready to pass or to vote on. I've heard some conjecture already that they may cut back on their August recess. They may keep members there in DC longer or bring them back sooner in August. But, probably we're looking at a much more heated fight escalating in the months ahead. Probably some pressure on them in August to pass it, as well as pressure on them to not pass it. And we think probably most likely we'll be seeing them fighting this out in September and heading into October. If it gets beyond October, I think there are a lot of pundits who are saying it's going to become very, very hard to pass anything at that point. So the things that folks want to see in a combined package now is what we should be talking to our members of Congress about. So I'll pause there. I think that's kind of the 20,000-foot view here of where we're likely to be heading over the weeks and months ahead.
Questions? Okay, so that is the context. As everyone knows, Reimagine Appalachia has been producing amazing content around the impact of policies, what the impact it could have on real lives, and how we move forward. So Steve Herzenberg, our illustrious executive director at Keystone Research Center, one of the co-chairs of the campaign, you're going to talk about the new newspaper paper on maximizing community benefit. I have a couple of slides that highlight the thing if you want them, but I'm going to let you start talking. And then if they're relevant, I'll pull them up. So thank you, Steve. Or do you have slides? You're welcome to share. And you're on mute.
Mute. There we go. Okay. Thank you, Susan. Sorry. Yeah. So I'll let you, put up a slide or when you think it makes sense. And no worries if you don't do that. So when I'm done, I'm going to put a couple of links in the chat, including to the white paper that I'm talking about. But this white paper was released on Friday, May 21st. It's called Maximizing Value, Community and Labor Standards. And it really fleshes out the heart of the Reimagine Appalachia policy agenda, which is making sure that these massive federal climate infrastructure investments have community and labor requirements that guarantee that communities and working people benefit from those investments. One thing that was a real coup in terms of this paper is the team that released it. The chair of that digital press conference, I think I'll find the link to that and put it in the chat as well, but was Marcia Dinkins of Ohioans for Sustainable Change, who's the chair of our Racial Justice Working Group, and also the lead author of the paper, Amanda Woodrum from Policy Matters Ohio. But they were accompanied in that digital presser by the presidents of the state AFL-CIO in Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, and Kentucky. So this was really an unprecedented demonstration of the fact that labor is kind of a key part of the leadership of Reimagine Appalachia, and on board the fact that an aggressive climate infrastructure plan can be a big win for working people and unions, but clearly the details matter. And so this white paper really had the details in terms of how to make sure, again, working people unions and diverse community members all benefit from these investments. One of the strengths of the white paper is that it includes a whole bunch of real world examples. So if some of what I say sounds a bit abstract, then I think going to that paper and looking at those examples will make it come to life for you. So the first requirement, and it's actually displayed on the slide, is that the climate infrastructure investment must ensure strong union rights and good wages on construction projects and on permanent jobs that are created with federal subsidies. So for construction projects, something called project labor agreements are the gold standard. What those are is that on a specific project, such as a utility scale solar project, or let's say if you're building electric vehicle infrastructure, or a limited impact hydro project, kind of any large scale wind project, what it means is that essentially all of the trades labor, so carpenters, electricians, laborers, operating engineers, have to come from the union hiring hall. So there's a great specific example that's comes out of Cincinnati, and it's a utility scale project in Appalachia, Ohio, driven by demand for electricity from the city of Cincinnati, surrounding municipalities, and then other residential consumers in Ohio. From the get-go in that project, the developer and the mayor worked closely with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, the IBEW. They put out a request for proposal that included a project labor agreement. Again, project labor agreements have a long history on construction projects, and they are a great way to make sure they create good union jobs, as well as ensure that the work is done by really skilled workers who've been through apprenticeships, and that the work gets done productively and done right. The second part of this first requirement around permanent jobs is federal infrastructure investments going to be creating or sustaining jobs at more efficient manufacturing companies, or at broadband companies, or at electric vehicle and battery manufacturers. So there's well-established tools that can ensure decent wages and ensure union rights on those kinds of projects. They're called labor peace agreements. Part of what they mean is that employers can't interfere with workers' organizing rights. They can't intimidate workers into not joining unions, which unfortunately is the reality in many US employers. And again, a recent example is Amazon in Alabama put in enormous amounts of money behind discouraging workers from joining a union. And again, there's a specific example of an army base repurposed with public taxpayer dollars that included labor standards, helping to ensure the unionization of the permanent jobs. So that's the first thing: union rights and good wages on construction and permanent jobs. Second critical requirement is community hiring. So what that means is too often in the past, construction and other good union jobs have excluded women and people of color. So the good union jobs created by climate infrastructure investment must go to more women and people of color. Again, there's a huge wealth of experience with ensuring that happens, and having local hiring, hiring by zip code, accompanying that by effective recruitment and screening and pre-employment training, and what are called apprenticeship readiness or pre-apprenticeship programs. So again, specific examples in the paper, Cleveland, Columbus, Pittsburgh example that's overseen by something called the Builders Guild, a labor management partnership in southwestern Pennsylvania for the last 2 or 3 years, has been training and placing unprecedented numbers of Black workers on unionized construction projects in the Pittsburgh area. So now what we need to do is to scale up those success stories, including in smaller cities and rural areas in our region, make it part of the way we do business when government dollars are involved. And then another critical piece of the plan in this slide, it's headlamps to hard hats is the shorthand, making sure dislocated coworkers are a priority for targeted hiring into good new union jobs. Again, basically the model should be, let's move people from one good union job, which they're losing in fossil fuel industries, into a good new union job in clean energy or in the sustainable economy. Again, there's a bit more detail in how to do that, but frankly, the building trades are a large-scale model and actually that moves people all the time from one company to another, from one good union job when that project's done to a next new good union job. There's some, it gets more complicated if people are not moving within the same trade or if they're moving from a declining sector to a growing sector, but there's a body of experience that with the right policies, again, we can mediate these transitions in a way that's not just train and pray, not moving people to a place they don't want to go to take a job they don't want, but moving people from the good union job they have to their next good union job, capitalizing as much as feasible on the skills and experience that they already have. Just 6 days after this was released, over 200 House Democrats signed a letter to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, underscoring that infrastructure investment must include strong labor standards and union rights, and talking about the fact that clean energy has too often had businesses that discourage unionization. Pennsylvania's Susan Wild from the Lehigh Valley was one of 3 people who rounded up the signatures for that letter. So with that, I will follow through by putting some links in the chat, but Susan, happy to take questions or let you move down the agenda.
Now I'm on mute. If there are any questions or comments, again, our goal here is to make sure that folks know about the proposals that we're putting on the table so that we can all become effective advocates and help lift up the importance of this opportunity. So questions or comments for Steve?
Patty had a question in the chat.
Yeah, I had a question. I know that we had the leaders of the unions from each state on our call, but do we have a plan for reaching out to the rank and file, briefing people and asking for their support to kind of mobilize contact to our congressional delegation from actual union workers?
So that's a fantastic and obvious, but also but not a suggestion that I've heard in the last week or two. So that's a fantastic suggestion. One thing that has happened is where the Pennsylvania AFL-CIO's legislative director and communications director are now becoming part of our federal advocacy team, and that's been done. I mean, they were volunteering to do that, very excited to do that. But we're really at the beginning stages of leveraging that level of support and engagement. And what you just said is mind-blowingly obvious, but I hadn't thought of it.
I'd be happy to help on that because I'm working with the Battle of Homestead Foundation people to put together a labor environment symposium in October around the fate of the Mon Valley.
Yeah.
anticipating what will happen when US Steel actually leaves, which all the signs are that they're going to. And this is kind of putting down a blueprint of what do we want to have happen, and what do we want to extract from them as they're on their way out, in anticipation of preventing some of the difficulties that occurred last time. So I was thinking about briefings for labor unions around this particular white paper. I know we've done a number of them that are relevant, but this one I think is the most close to leveraging the interest of actual working people. And I know we did a requirement that union wages apply to all the projects, all the 11 contractors that worked on our borough building. And it was a little dicey sometimes. I mean, it was a little tense, but we got it together and it worked out fine. So happy to talk to you further about this, and I'm really interested in helping on that.
Thank you, Patty. That's great.
Yep.
And John, I saw that you had a hand up. Is it still up?
I did. I didn't really mean to put my hand up. Can you hear me? But
Yeah.
I was wondering if from Steve, we could get a copy of the letter signed by the 200 members of Congress regarding, I guess it's a dear colleague letter.
Yeah, so I'll put both those links in the chat right now. I promise to do that, and
Thank you.
do it right now.
And I'll send it out as part of the follow-up as well. Okay, so we're going to take a couple minutes.
Prem also had their hand up, sorry.
Sorry, Prem. I don't even want to see it.
Hi. Yeah, so I had kind of maybe a broader question, but I was wondering if care economy jobs are prioritized or put anywhere within the Reimagine blueprint, since they're definitely low green jobs that are undervalued, and the labor that goes into them is traditionally and primarily done by women. So the mention earlier of trying to prioritize jobs for women and people of color.
Sure, that was a great question. So they actually are, and in a way we'll lift up at least a little bit in another white paper in August. The third bucket of Reimagine is called Rebuilding the Middle Class. And one core part of that is union rights for all. The basic idea of union rights for all is that most jobs aren't carbon or green. Most jobs are actually now in the services. Too many of those jobs are in the low wage services without practical abilities to organize, without adequate wage standards, whether it's minimum wage or occupation specific. So the care workforce is Exhibit A when it comes to people doing essential work, really important work, but basically not getting adequately compensated for it. So, and again, there's been a whole lot of unionization in home care, in childcare. There's domestic workers campaigns in different places, but in the end, and you also need more government money for those jobs. So we will. I mean, it sounds like you can help us. So once you put, I'll put my contact information in the chat, but if you put yours in too, if that's something where you have knowledge or an interest in being part of the work, we're actually beginning, we got our first meeting on the planning of that white paper that's this Friday at 2:00. So if you want to be part of that, let us know.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can make my PowerPoint work. We have a couple of opportunities, actually, and I'm going to ask you to do both of your sections at the same time, just so it'll be easier. And then so we have a couple of things going on. I'm going to go backwards, and then we'll come back to that when I know how to work PowerPoint. And Annie's going to talk a little bit about keeping in touch with the campaign, about some of the resources that we have available, and a little bit about some of the local work we're doing.
Sure. So let me pull up the chat. I'll drop some links. So basically, I'll do the local government first because that is one way to get plugged in. I will put in the chat the link, the reimagineappalachia.org/local, and Natalia Rudiak, who I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with in the Pittsburgh region, is organizing this effort. And if you could go to the next slide, Susan. So basically, we're targeting different facets of local government, local legislative bodies, council members, supervisors to pass a local resolution in support, mayors, commissioners, treasurers to sign on to our executive letter, municipal and county managers to talk to them about the resolutions. And all of this is to kind of build support to show our state government and our federal government that we're ready for the federal funding. We're prepared for it. We need it. Your constituents support large spending on infrastructure in the region. So we have a toolkit on our website. Actually, let me put that up on the chat right now. So it's handy and you guys can walk through it. It's pretty intuitive. And there's a section if you are a local leader versus a section if you want to introduce it to your local government and talking about the process. It's all through the toolkit. Patty's a good example because Forest Hills is one of the boroughs that passed it actually. And she was, I think, the first one actually to pass it. And most of them are in Pennsylvania because of our established relationships there already. So these are some of the mayors that are also part of the Marshall Plan that have been very supportive of it. And here are the local communities that have already signed on, and a lot are pending. It's just that the different meetings are scattered throughout the month. So we'll have probably double this list by the end of the month at least. And I know Dawn is doing a lot of work on this too with Natalia. So thank you, Dawn, for your work. And if you just go to the website, you can kind of click through it, look at the toolkit, pass it on to your local government. I know the Triborough Eco District in Pittsburgh is learning about this now, so it's very exciting. Dawn, do you have anything to add to that? I know you've been working with Natalia.
No, I don't, except we're really excited about an upcoming meeting with our county executive, Rich Fitzgerald, and Patty will be joining me at that meeting.
That's exciting.
That's it.
So yeah, and then ways to participate. We have our, these will be the first Wednesday of every month at 4 p.m. And I added a Facebook group you can join to get updates on the infrastructure bill. We have our planning committee calls on Tuesday, the resolutions. We have, what else? Oh, those are just all the different calls. And we added an events page on our website so you can kind of look to see what events we have. Usually they're online webinars to learn more about certain white paper topics, etc. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Let me just add and tie this back to the first topic. I can't tell you how important this stuff is. I mean, this really is meat and potatoes, bread and butter stuff to help us move the federal agenda. We'll do all the lobbying and all that stuff as we usually do, but this bottom up stuff from the community-based level, the voices coming in when they're out on break and things like that, the more the better. Seriously, this is good.
Yeah, and so, you know, folks have heard me say this before. My role here is to help coordinate the Pennsylvania outreach to the organizations that have membership and support, and to help move our policy agenda and make sure you have the information that you need. But you bring people, you bring constituencies and supporters. And then we also really need to make sure that we take this local support up to Congress. So, because there's another kind of lobbying, so just to also to connect it back. Now you heard it, now is the time to meet with members of Congress. Now is the time to help push the agenda. Even the Republicans, I'm going to say that I've said this before, but there are going to be Republicans who don't vote for a package, but will wholeheartedly support it and take credit for it, and will negotiate behind closed doors. So making sure that they have the opportunity to hear about why this is important, why it matters to our region in terms of jobs, the fact that climate and labor, environment and labor are working together, and that there is a vision for the future, that you know, this agenda includes things like broadband in rural areas, it includes workforce training, not asking people to relocate or become service workers, not that there's anything wrong with that, but like not asking people to give up a job that has been the lifeblood of their family history. This is a multi-state, cross-regional, multi-sector opportunity. So we are going to ask folks, and we will start providing talking points, one of the things that'll come out, but I want to start identifying organizations who can help be part of a team of people to go in and meet with members of Congress. I will provide support and help for that. So I'm going to send you a link. I'll put it in the chat. But we're just going to, it's a simple Google Doc. So if you are the kind of organization that would consider meeting with a member of Congress, what we'd like to do is be able to send in teams. Somebody from labor, somebody from environment, somebody from a local community to talk about this, somebody from broadband, religious organizations, like, social justice organizations. We'd like to send 2 to 3 organizations or entities in. So we're going to ask you to sign up. We are going to ask you, I'm going to go backwards here to the social media. We really do want, let's see, that's not backwards. These are the ways to follow us, because we want to be able to start lifting this message up in a more amplified way. We had a great event recently, as Steve talked about, with the 4 heads of AFL across different states. And they provided amazing content that we were able to get out on social media. So we really want to make sure that we're able to help push that message out, because the more of us doing it, we know that this is what works right now. Lots and lots of people are talking about infrastructure. This actually ties a lot of pieces together for a region that has really experienced the effects of some of the directions that we've taken that have not gotten us where we need to be. So I think we're gonna wrap up. We'll take questions or comments, but I know people, love getting 15 minutes back. So, and the other ask of you, besides the congressional sign up, besides following on social media, is to think about who is missing. Now, there are a number of groups that participated last time and aren't here, but what other organizations do you think should be part of this coalition, so that we can really expand our footprint and our ability to get this done? So, final questions or comments? Emphasis, notes?
I think we can also include in the email some upcoming white papers we have and we're working on. We'll definitely need a lot more people to help with those and get input. So depending on the organization.
Great. We are the kind of people who like to come to these kinds of meetings. So and there are people in our lives, in our communities, who rely on us to be those people. So that comes with, they rely on us to help get the word out. So thank you all for your time. And we will probably meet, depending on what happens. We're currently scheduled for the early July. If there's anything accelerated, you will hear from us on email. So also start adding Reimagine Appalachia and my email to your inbox so that we don't go to spam. With that, thank you all.